Ladies and gentlemen, Scott Barrett is here. It is the Power Hour podcast. Nice little reunion episode. Johnny and I broke up right before college. I went to PFFU for people, but guess what? It's the night before Thanksgiving at our local dive bar, and for one night only, we're back together, baby. And not just that, we got a little side action here in the form of the lovely and beautiful Russell Clay and the loquacious Joe Holka. How's it going, guys?
Can I be the fat stumbly girl at the bar who's like tripping over herself and like wearing high heels? That's going to be me.
The one that you need to take
at one point, you're going to throw up on your sundress, and Joe's going to hit on you anyway.
Yeah.
We could do that.
In my imagined.
Yeah. Scott, did you have that plan?
Dude, I don't know. I'm a muse for the gods. Or a medium. I don't know. I blew it. Yeah, I planned it. So anyway, today we're talking about running backs, which I know is Russell's, I think, favorite position. And Joe has invented some statistics and done some really, really cool work on running backs that may or may not have taken up 200 hours of his life over the past 3 months.
Confirmed.
Oof.
Wow. And Johnny, best ball's biggest zero RB advocate.
Yeah. Huge fan.
I just finished my bell cow running backs piece. It's probably coming out sometime next week. You guys know how I feel about the position. So we have a lot to talk about. It should be super exciting. Johnny, yeah, man. I mean, start us off. Or I'm just going to ramble.
Yeah. No, so zero RB. Not sure what it even means anymore for best ball leagues. Some people tell you it's the 3rd round. Some people tell you it's the 5th round. Apparently it's the 10th round for some people. I don't know. I just, and we've talked about this a lot, Scott. It's like you just want to draft like valuable players, which is sort of what I do for running backs too. But I think running backs are super important. I think they are the most important position in MFL10s. That's why I wanted to get like a handful of people in here to talk running backs. And if you miss on running back, whether it's in the 3rd round, 7th round, 10th round, it's really bad for your team. Go ahead.
All right, can I go?
Yeah.
Let's start by saying that number one, injury rates are, those are good. That is correct. Running backs get hurt at exponentially higher rates than any other position, and that's something we should definitely be taking into account. I mean, you talk about more in super flex leagues. For me, this is where I kind of lean more towards quarterbacks early on. But generally speaking, I mean, that data is good. I just think the upside of running backs in general, especially, bell cows, as we're using for reference to Scotty's article there. But I think the top end are really important,
Yeah, for sure. I would just say that, I mean, this time of the year, I'm like probably behind you guys because I like to get all my charting and stuff done before I start doing MFL10. So I'm only probably in, I think I've completed like 6 or 7 at this point. So way behind. I normally try and get to anywhere from like 30 to 40, but hopefully a little bit more this year, depending on time. But I like to do all the charting and rushing expectation stuff first, just because then I can kind of get a better idea of who I want to target past like those main guys we're talking about, kind of that trio at the top. I'm kind of with Scott when it comes to grabbing at least one of those guys, but after that, I think I tend to be less risk averse than most people. I'd rather kind of shoot for some guys that I think are talented in good situations, as opposed to getting players that I think could see volume, but are definitely lesser type players. So I'd rather attack those guys that may have some situational concerns as far as volume, And then hopefully if something breaks my way, I found myself another running back one pretty quickly.
And I know you're like main dude who is going to be that exact situation is probably Spencer Ware, I would think. Let's talk. What are you doing with Ware right now? Because he's an interesting one that we definitely should talk about.
Yeah, I mean, it's no surprise that I loved Spencer Ware last year, and going into charting this year with all the injuries that he went through as far as his concussions, and he faded a little bit down the stretch according to most people. His efficiency didn't really suffer a whole lot. His sample this year, if anything, was better because of his use in the passing game and honestly his efficiency in the passing game. But he faced 8 or more in the box, I think, at a pretty high rate compared to, so he was in the 86th percentile in his loaded box per attempts. So he faced a loaded box a lot, but his elusiveness behind the line and his yards before contact is something I look for in regards to trying to find those big plays. So someone that's not facing contact, even in loaded box situations, it means his elusiveness is pretty strong, or at least his yards after contact are strong. So as soon as he's getting through that initial burst of players in a loaded box situation, he's breaking off a lot of big plays. So we saw a ton of that with Spencer Ware last year and then this past year as well. So I just think that in general, even the draft capital that's involved this year, I've never been a big believer in Charkandrick West. I don't think he's going to be much of a factor. And I think, if anything, I think the Chiefs might have moved up in the draft for Spencer Ware's backup. To be honest, I don't see a guy in that backfield that I think is going to be able to be as efficient as Ware has been, especially if Ware comes back healthy.
Russ, is Kareem Hunt going to take his job?
So circling back to Spencer Ware for a second, as a college prospect, he had a really weird college career because he went to LSU where, I mean, you know, you talk about Alfred Blue in the NFL. He wasn't very good, but he was like a 5-star prospect. There was a bunch of guys in that backfield while he was there, including Jeremy Hill, that were all like highly touted high school recruits. And he never really got a lot of carries, and that kind of dropped him to the 6th round. But I think now that he's kind of sustained a role for like in that Kansas City offense for a few years, I mean, I think we can start to slightly less look at draft position, but I'm still a little worried about Kareem Hunt sort of eating into a feature role. I think he's going to get some touches this year. I don't love Spencer Ware, but I'm fine. You know, I think he'll be okay. I think he'll get enough touches to be at least reasonable at his ADP.
He's a guy that's so weird for me. I can never, like, one day I want Spencer Ware at his ADP, and the next day I don't want him. I don't know. Scott, are you buying Ware?
So I'm not. I'm a big Hunt guy, and I think Hunt at a certain point this season earns that feature role. And why do I think that? Mostly because I just really want to think that. I head over heels in love with Hunt. He was PFF's top-graded running back last season. Among 139 qualifying draft-eligible running backs last season with 150 rushing attempts, Kareem Hunt ranked 1st in missed tackles forced per touch, 3rd in yards per route run, and 12th in yards after contact per attempt. He's only ever fumbled once throughout the entirety of his college career. He struggled last season, like you said, injuries. He ranked 6th worst in yards per carry average from week 8 until the end of the season. At PFF, we look at yards after contact per attempt, missed tackles forced per attempt. And the thing with that is like over the course of the full season, he was kind of disappointing in terms of rushing efficiency. But he forced a ton of missed tackles as a receiver, which is like really surprising considering they barely used him all as a receiver. I think after week 4, he only saw more than 3 targets in a single game just once. And I think that's a big reason why I could see Hunt, at a certain point eclipse Ware. And I could be wrong, and I'm interested to hear a little bit more about your data. But the main takeaway should be that this is like the holy grail of running back landing spots. Last season was only the second time in 13 years that Andy Reid's lead running back failed to average at least 17 points per game, where averaged 14.3. Over the past 13 seasons, Andy Reid's RB1 has averaged 19.5 fantasy points per game and 20.8 opportunities per game. So definitely very attractive role in Kansas City for either running back.
Throw some water on him, folks. He's hot.
Scott, so let me ask you something before kind of get into a little bit more of the rushing expectation stuff. Do you think so? Where's kind of passing game usage went down towards the end of the year? Do you think that was more because of Tyreek Hill? And if Tyreek Hill is seeing more of a kind of a different role this year, anyways, do you think some of that can go back to where? Because like you said, a lot of his efficiency, his broken tackles, his big plays came in the passing game, and I don't know if Hunt has that kind of upside that Spencer Ware does. So do you think that kind of the redefined role of Tyreek Hill helps Ware in the passing game?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I didn't think about it like that, but I guess it does make sense. You know, he's kind of seeing those low ADOT targets where he's not really like a typical outside wide receiver in terms of usage. So maybe that kind of detracted from Ware. But I think it's just Ware has never really been used much as a receiver. Kareem Hunt, meanwhile, like I said, I think he ranked like top 3 in yards per route run last season. He caught 41 of 43 targets. It was fairly efficient on those targets. He didn't drop a single pass last season. Amazing hand. So I'm kind of hoping it goes to Hunt, and a lot of my data backs that up. But I agree, it could be a frustrating running back by committee situation. Although we really haven't seen much of that outside of last season from Andy Reid.
See, even if he gets a few less carries, and maybe I still think that he's going to see more targets because a lot of the targets that he was receiving early in the year went to Tyreek Hill late in the year. So if Tyreek Hill has a completely different role and he's going to be seeing more volume anyways, I still think a lot of those targets, even if they ended up half and half between Ware and between Hunt, I think that a lot of them could go to Ware, and that's where a lot of his upside came from early in the season. So even if his kind of overall touches go down, I still don't see a reason why his efficiency is going to go down as well. And I think just in general, what he's done against loaded boxes, what he's done in poor situations, it's something that I haven't seen through 60 running backs now in my entire process. So it's not something I'm really willing to ignore just because of this prospect coming in. I could be completely wrong on that, but there's a lot of very good players, very good prospects that I've charted, and there's very, very few that have come close to what Ware has done efficiency-wise over the last 2 years.
So
that's really interesting, and I know he's a favorite of a lot of tape guys. Matt Waldman was high on him early on in his career, and I think he still is. Sorry, did I cut someone off?
Yes, me. All right, I want to throw something out there in terms of running back impact year one. Since 2000, there have been 24 running backs to have, I used rushing yards, over 1,000 rushing yards in year one. And 17 of them were drafted in the top 2 rounds. So I think when we're looking at year one impact from running backs, normally, unless it's like an Alfred Morris situation or Jordan Howard last year, I think we're kind of looking at sort of a slower progression in terms of role. But again, in terms of Ware and Scott mentioned the receiving downs and the receiving prowess of Hunt, I think that's where we should be worried about, Hunt kind of getting in there, making a few big plays early, and then them sort of starting to shift the game plan more towards Hunt a little bit by the end of the year. But that Tyreek Hill point's a little more interesting. I doubt they totally stop using him in the run game, but he's going to be used in
Sure.
more downfield situations for sure this year. So I think that's a pretty valid point in terms of targets to running backs.
Scott, what did sorry, one more question for Scott. What does PFF say about Hunt's pass protection?
Let me pull that up.
And then while you do that, would you say that Kareem Hunt is your 2017 DeAndre Washington?
Oh, God. I had Jordan Howard number 2, so maybe My number 2 guy's gonna go off.
No, I just remembered that he was going to take Latavius Murray's job by week 2 or something. I don't remember exactly what it was.
He's back on the pod. That's his boy right now.
Hey, I'm okay with DeAndre Washington this year. I think. I don't know. I haven't decided on him either. But let's talk a little bit of while Scott looks for that. The RBs after the first, obviously the first 3 should be the first 3 picks in MFL10s, unless there's more issues with Zeke's suspension coming to surface. But when it comes to like Melvin Gordon, LaShawn McCoy, Freeman, Ajayi, Howard, DeMarco, those are kind of the next group. Do you guys have them all sort of in the same category? For me, I have Melvin Gordon in a tier by himself away from the rest of them, and then I have the rest kind of pretty close. Where do you guys stand on those few as sort of the next group after the top 3?
You can go, Joe.
Sure. To be honest, I really like Ajayi out of that group. There could be a little bit of bias there because I didn't play him enough in DFS this year, but I really liked what I saw from Ajayi on tape as far as like that group and his efficiency, even after kind of things started to go downhill with his line later on in the year. His yards after contact was just absurd. So 98th percentile between my 60-player sample. I'm sure Scott's got some better yards after contact numbers as far as historically is at PFF, but I just really think that their offense is going to kind of shift that way. I think there's definitely some regression coming for Melvin Gordon. See, I was a Melvin Gordon. He wasn't necessarily my guy last year, but I was one of the people that said that things weren't as bad as they seemed on the outside. So it was, I think it's kind of fall in between his first year and last year, definitely with touchdowns. I don't know if we're going to see that again. I think he kind of fell into a perfect situation when Woodhead got hurt, just because Woodhead had secured so much of that role in the past that pretty much all those carries went to Gordon, which could easily happen again. There's just a lot of mouths to feed in that offense. I'm not so sure there's as many in Miami in the red zone. Not really a big kind of a believer in a lot of their passing weapons. But if there's one guy in that tier, as far as what they've done in rushing expectation and kind of what their role is going to be, I still like Ajayi the most.
Yeah, I definitely. There's definitely gonna be, a bust or two in this tier. I'm fairly confident in that. At the beginning of the offseason, I was like, all right, Ajayi and Howard are my bust guys because they weren't. I'm like a draft position zealot, Joe. So that's kind of how I do things.
Sure.
But as the offseason has gone on, I'm kind of warming up to both, especially as you mentioned Ajayi in that role. I mean, I think he kind of proved last year that he can handle a pretty big workload. I mean, I know we have that knee issue, but I'm not worried about that for 2017. So I like both of them. I still have Melvin one. I agree there's going to be some regression in touchdowns. I mean, that's pretty obvious for me, even as a Melvin guy. But I'd say I have him. And then I kind of like DeMarco too. I mean, Derrick Henry, I love Derrick Henry as a prospect, but when you look how they're going to use him this year, I feel like we're going to see more of the same. It wasn't like, he had some big attempt games, but I feel like especially towards the end of the year, even when that injury was going on, he was still used. Like Henry was getting some carries, but I just feel like it's going to be more of the same. So I'm pretty comfortable with that tier, even though I feel like it's risky.
Yeah. No, I'm with you on DeMarco. I think he's probably the most undervalued of that group, maybe, in my opinion. Scott, I know you're a big Ajayi guy too. Where are you at on these fellas?
So Kareem Hunt was slightly above average as a pass blocker in terms of pass blocking efficiency and PFF pass blocking grade. He wasn't asked to pass block too often. He was running a lot of routes last year. I wouldn't say it's necessarily a weakness to his game, but if Spencer Ware is this fantastic pass blocker, it definitely play a role in immediate playing time for sure.
Yeah.
We also have to remember that the Chiefs traded up to get Kareem Hunt. They traded an additional 4th and 7th round pick to move up like 18 spots, I think. And he said he was after the first 3 running backs, he was their next running back he wanted to take on the board. So they definitely think highly of him as a talent. Jay Ajayi, yeah, absolute fucking monster last year. He led all running backs in yards after contact per attempt and missed tackles forced per attempt. A lot of people don't seem to realize is that offensive line is not good at all. Yeah, and they did have some injuries, but yeah, not good at all. I have a cool stat I'll reference in a little bit, but I'm actually buying into some of the offseason hype surrounding Ajayi that is going to play a larger role in the passing game. And if that is the case, you know, I can't think of too many other running backs who have his kind of upside. Yeah, a cool stat from Jay Ajayi was when he rushed to either side of Jermon Bushrod, he averaged 2.97 yards per carry. And then when he rushed anywhere else, he averaged 6.04 yards per carry. That dude fucking sucks. But yeah, every
shots fired.
Sucks. But every PFF efficiency stat, he came out on top last year. Absolutely dominated. Looked awesome. It was over what the data I looked at. It removed his 3 best games. So everyone wants to talk about his 3 200-yard games. I stripped those out. He's still ranked first in missed tackles forced per attempt, actually better, and then still like top 6 in yards after contact. I'm so with you on DeMarco Murray currently being a value. You know, Mike Mularkey said earlier this offseason, Murray is the guy. He has shown he's the guy, and he will continue to be that guy. Even if Henry does see an uptick in usage, which I think will only be as a runner, that really doesn't do much to DeMarco Murray. He was a massive bell cow last season, ranked 4th best in bell cow average, 4th in total bell cow games. So I really don't see Henry's possible ascension hurting him too much. Henry's crazy overvalued right now as ADP RB 28. But yeah, Henry also sucks as a receiver. Sorry, Russ, but he ranked 152nd of 160 qualifying running backs in 2014 in terms of pass blocking efficiency, 113 of 158 in 2015. Only 15 of his 583 touches over that span came via receptions. Murray saw 50 more targets than him last season. Yeah, in DFS, I'm going to look at Murray, especially in games I think Tennessee is going to be trailing. But yeah, in redraft, he's a value. And yeah, don't draft Henry. Draft James Conner in the last round. Draft Jonathan Williams in the last round.
Yeah, and dude, the best thing about Murray is as someone's repeating the sound.
He had a lot of injuries last year too, right?
Yes. So he hurt his toe. Somebody has the sound repeating.
I don't hear
I
it.
don't know which one of you it is. Then it's probably you. Anyways, so Murray hurt his foot or his toe, one or the other, and then he got like slightly less carries in the second half of the season. And I think if he was fully healthy, that wouldn't have slowed down at all. So, I mean, the fact that, you know, Henry saw a few more opportunities in the second half of the season might not have been so much like, oh, Henry ascending to this like committee. You had a dude with like a bum toe. So Henry's ADP is nuts.
One thing that I really like about those Tennessee backs is last year they faced 8 or more in the box quite a bit. Hopefully this offense can kind of take a step in the passing game and kind of alleviate that a little bit, because there's one thing that I've seen over even just the past 2 years. It's those running backs that perform very well against 8 or more in the box, but still have large number of yards before contact, are guys that can really take a step if they end up facing better situations the next year. So I do really like both of those guys, but I agree that Henry's a bit overpriced as far as ADP.
Yeah, and then I guess one question too is like when there's 8 in a box against a running quarterback, isn't that a little less of a normal 8 in the box? I mean, one of those guys' jobs is to pay attention to Marcus Mariota. So I imagine his reaction to a running back is going to be less than a guy who doesn't have to watch a running quarterback.
Sure, that's a really good point. I'd have to look a little bit more at that. Just at first glance, some of those guys. Yeah, okay. So I think that's a pretty good point. I never even thought of it that way.
Hey, Scott, can I just totally rip your point apart by saying that one time Derrick Henry had a 60-yard reception in college? There you go. Boom. Good receiver.
Owned.
Game over.
Oh man, I will say
60-yard reception at the NFL level.
I will say that Henry does look great in the open field. I don't think he knows how to run routes.
No, I definitely
I don't know if that body can run routes.
I think that's definitely a good point. No debate here.
It's like a totem pole, dude. I mean, holy shit! He's fun to watch, but I wouldn't put him as my like primary receiving back. That's for sure. So I think another point with Melvin too is like even though touchdowns might regress, he was so much better in the passing game the second half of the season versus the first half of the season. And I don't, there's people saying that like all these other little scrub backs that the Chargers have are going to, take over some Woodhead role. I think that's like total nonsense.
Yeah. Dude, I think like Andre Williams has the most receptions of any running back on that depth chart.
Right.
No, they got that. Oliver, dude, it's ass. I mean, the concern is, well, you said you think a decline in touchdowns. I don't think so. I think that offense is nuts on paper. They drafted two of PFF's highest graded guards. They added Mike Williams. Keenan Allen's coming back. Another year for Hunter Henry. That offense is sexy.
I agree with you, but I'm saying he's not going to score like 6 touchdowns the first 3 or 4 games again. That's not going to happen.
Probably not, but he could definitely eclipse that touchdown number for sure. The concern in usage, I think, is the coaching change because the new offensive coordinator and the new head coach never really had a bell cow back in their history, like a guy to see just like a ton of targets, a ton of carries, and play on a high percentage of the snaps. But at the same time, that's like there's zero depth behind him, and it is so bad. I think he's just used in a similar fashion to how he was last season, which was like honestly almost comparable to Le'Veon Bell and David Johnson, right behind the two of them.
Yep.
All right. Quick question on the Chiefs. Can we circle back to Spencer Ware real quick? What if it's a dumpster fire? Like, what if their offense isn't good and Mahomes gets in? Could that be like a crazy second half for that running back if Mahomes is in there? Like, just throwing it out there. I mean, a lot of talk about the win total from Silva lately. Like, if they're bad, do you think they go with Smith all year?
Dude, if they're bad, there's no way Smith plays 16.
Right. So I feel like that might be good for, whoever is there.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Russ, let's talk about your boy.
Oh, boy.
Your boys. So Todd Gurley and Leonard Fournette round out the end of the second round, and they are the strangest guys in the second round to deal with. I think when they both go into the third round, I'm okay with them, but I struggle taking them in the second round. Is your boy Gurley finally going to actually be good, or what are we doing here?
I'm going Fournette over Gurley. Pretty much for sure at this point. I like Gurley as a talent, but you guys know last year heading into it, I wasn't worried about the Rams at all. Like I thought it was going to be fine. I threw out all those PRF stats about how he had 1,000 yards in his rookie year and he's going to be amazing. And he wasn't, and he sucks. And the situation is terrible. Jared Goff is not good. So even with a new coach, I'm still worried. I think he's going to get, if he's healthy, I think he's going to get 280 to 300 touches this year. So I think that has value. But I think I'm still waiting for future years to potentially see what we want. And I mean, after Trent Richardson, anything's possible. That's kind of how I play things now. Trent Richardson was one of my favorite prospects, and he ended up just being horrible. So Gurley could be horrible at this point. I think everyone has to admit that. But I'm not buying him at his ADP. No way.
0 shares?
Low shares. I definitely go Fournette pretty much every time over him.
0. I don't think I'll have 1 share of Gurley this year. I mean, he's one of the guys that you look back and he's like barely better than like Latavius Murray, who everyone hated last year as far as efficiency. He's in the bottom 20th percentile in rushing and in passing. As far as my 60 player sample, he was in the bottom 5 percentile against 7 or fewer in the box, and he's in the bottom 10 percentile in yards before contact. Like literally everything that kind of this is all about, he's like a bottom 5% guy. And I don't think I would draft him anywhere near the first 5 rounds, let alone whatever. He's going in like the late 2nd round right now. Is that what you said?
Yeah, I think he's like 23, 22, 23.
So, yeah, but Latavius Murray had a way better situation. Joe, you're referencing yards before contact, but to me, yards before contact is more a representative of an offensive line, I think, rather than a running back, unless, comparing if you want to look at Todd Gurley versus Cunningham on similar down and distances.
True. I think when you're going to use that is when it's kind of the outlier of what you're saying. Like they have a high yards before contact in a bad offensive line situation, someone like Amir Abdullah. But I get what you're saying. Like a lot of those guys in Oakland are going to have a higher yards before contact just because their offensive line's so good.
Yeah. So, and that's another thing too, is like, I don't want to understate the significance of Andrew Whitworth joining this Rams offense. He's ranked among PFF's 6 highest graded offensive tackles in run blocking in 2 of the last 3 seasons. So that's going to go a bit long. It's going to be better for him. But like the biggest offseason move for the Rams was getting rid of dummy Jeff Fisher. In the entire history of the NFL, there are 320 instances of a running back accumulating at least 275 carries in a single season. Among these 320 running back seasons, Todd Gurley's 2016 season ranked 5th worst in yards per carry. That's an all-time bad season. But here's the thing. 4 of the 12 worst seasons on this list were all from running backs coached by Jeff Fisher. That's pretty God. Dude, he's the worst, man. So that's going to be huge for the offense.
Chris Johnson begs to differ.
He also – all right, fair. He also here's the thing from me, Joe. Ready? So I posted this stat in one of my metrics that matter pieces. It actually got picked up by like a Rams blog or whatever, and I got one of the best critiques I've ever gotten. Metrics that matter, ... You can't measure heart and determination.
Oh,
beautiful diss on me by that guy. But yeah, so here's my stat, and I want to hear what you think about breakaway percentage. So in 2015, Todd Gurley had the highest percentage of carries to go for 25 or more yards, 8 of 229. In 2016, he ranked dead last by that same metric on 278 attempts. He had 0 runs of 25 or more yards. That is a crazy difference. What do you think that is representative of? Do you want guys? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it probably falls somewhere in the middle, right? I mean, as far as big plays like that, it's just such a small sample size in general. Like a lot of stuff can go wrong one season and kind of go right the other season. But those kind of stats, I think that there's a lot of value in them as trying to find upside, but I still would rather see the consistency behind that kind of upside too. Like someone that's been efficient, someone that's in a good situation, and then also has the upside of getting long plays. I don't want to be in a situation where the only way he's going to hit value in DFS or the only way he's going to come close to his ADP is on big runs or larger. That's one of my biggest problems with Isaiah Crowell is his efficiency was absolutely pathetic. He's in a bad situation, but he has the big play ability too. So do you really want to roll the dice on that week to week? Maybe in best ball, but definitely he's a guy that I probably will be avoiding at the similar ADP and kind of efficiency levels.
Yeah, 37% of Isaiah Crowell's total rushing yardage came on just 5% of his carries.
Right.
Whereas Spencer Ware was a guy who just, I think like 88% of the time, one of his runs resulted in positive yardage, which is like one of the top rates in the league. So,
yeah. Can we talk about Isaiah Crowell? Why the fuck is he RB13?
No idea. Not in. I'm out.
Dude Johnston's not going away. his target totals towards the second half of last season were encouraging, but like I really don't think
Crow was like his ADP was like perfect when he was like a what 4th, 5th, 6th-ish sort of round pick. He was like a mid RB2. It was like that's where he should have been going. This is
they're not going to score touchdowns. Like, isn't that a pretty big part of where most teams are getting their fantasy value from? Like, I'm not going anywhere near running back who's like kind of their production has so much to do with game flow and has so much to do with volume and touchdowns. Why would you go anywhere near running back on such a bad team unless he's proven that he can be a lot better than his offensive line that his team kind of shows you?
Yeah, and I mean they do. Cleveland does have a good offensive line. They do have
great offensive line.
They do have the best wide receiver in the NFL as their wide receiver 1. I mean, they have some things going for them, but
Corey Coleman?
Oh God, no.
Yeah, just wait till we get to Coleman on the wide receiver pod, Russ. I'm gonna put that dude in a fucking body bag. Listen, but it's like Crowell had like his season last year sort of went almost as good as it could have gone for him. And I do think he probably catches a few more passes this year, but still, like he's literally going essentially as an RB1. And on draft, I think he is going as an RB1. I think he's going in like the end of the 2nd round. I don't get it, man. Can't do it.
So I have a question for you guys. Last year at this time, you guys were all pretty much out on Todd Gurley, right? At RB1 or whatever it was.
I was out on him at Price. When he was in the first round.
That's what I mean. First round Price. If he was RB, so that's kind of the Leonard Fournette situation I think we're looking at here. Like you have a high floor in terms of carries, and he's what, RB12, you said?
Fournette. Yeah, Fournette and Miller sort of have been flipping back and forth.
So I think you're looking at a really high floor in terms of touches, but I'm not counting out the fact that it could just be miserable because I'll defer to you guys on offensive line stuff, but Jags' offensive line is pretty putrid, right?
Yes. Well, they were last year.
So I do like him as a buy for upside there, but I think you also have to recognize, it could be another Gurley situation.
Yeah. I'm buying either of Gurley and Fournette and Miller, like the 3 of them. When they fall into the 3rd round, it's like an auto click for me. But it's only because of a volume standpoint and solely because I don't think there is much competition behind any of the 3 of them for touches. Whereas Crowell, I think there is competition for touches. And he's going close to them.
I'm kind of avoiding that whole tier right now, to be honest with you. Like after those first 3 options, I'd rather wait until the 6th round and get one of Spencer Ware or Mike Gillislee. I would just rather wait and then grab kind of some wide receivers in that range. I just like their upside a lot better, I think, just as far as their talent's concerned. I get the volume thing. I don't know. I don't always like to kind of place my bets on like what I think are bad players, even if they're going to get volume on bad offenses more than anything.
Yeah, I mostly agree with you, except when I'm staring at like DeAndre Hopkins, Brandon Cooks, or like one of those running backs. Sure. Yeah, I like that is one of the grossest spots in MFL10s is like that.
Yeah,
21-ish to like 27, 28. I feel like puking no matter who I pick.
Scott, I want to hear your Gillislee take because I saw the Silva thing, and I'm on your side, but I'll let you go first.
Yeah, for those at home.
Can we first say that Scott fucking finagled that bet down from 2 times? Scott originally said, I bet Gillislee scores twice as many points, and then Silva says 1.75, and then Scott gets him down to 1.5.
No,
and that's standard. That's standard because that's what Scott does when he makes bets.
I said standard leagues, and then he switched it to PPR, and then I bargained him down a little bit. If he wins, he gets a picture of me wearing a Matt Jones shirt as his avatar. No, that's if I win. If he wins, I have a Rex Burkhead avatar for like 2 weeks. But that's a boring bet compared to the one me and Russ made yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You want to talk about it, Scott? Or are you going to just leave it out there?
If I get 4 more wins at least than Russ in the Elite Lemonade Dynasty League this season, I'm win now. He is very much not close to that. Loser gets a tattoo of a lemon on their ass.
And the irony is that we've kind of been arguing back and forth about Fournette. Fournette's gonna decide it. Like if Fournette's bad, I'm gonna have 3 wins this year. And
here's the picture of the lemon. Ready?
You have to talk, Scott, so that it shows up. It's all right.
Oh, really? All right. Well, there you go. Sad, frowny face lemon.
Yep.
On the butt.
And also on that note, Scott and I have a bet on Leonard Fournette that he will average, 17.168, something like that, carries this season. I feel pretty confident in that one, but we'll see. What's that? Was that $100, $50? I don't remember.
I don't know.
You never want to bet very many dollars, so it's less than 100. But all right. So let's sort of move down this track. I think let's talk the rookies. So are you guys buying the rookies at ADP? I'm starting to move away from the rookies. I was buying Mixon when he was like a late 4th, early 5th round pick. He is now, I think, past McCaffrey, so I'm completely out on Mixon. And I think Dalvin Cook's just about the only one I'm still buying at all when he falls sort of later. Are you guys buying these guys? It's hard. It's getting hard.
It sucks because the guys ahead of them are just so terrible. But, I mean, the same kind of thing. I don't know if I'm in love with their situation, but I'm definitely not buying the guys behind them and not really betting on them to hold either of those rookies off. I'm just not really excited about the situation in general.
Russ, man.
I think in terms of McCaffrey, you're looking at a best ball guy that's going to start off the season slow, especially with Stewart there. I think he's going to progress as the season goes on into a pretty comfortable weekly target role. So I'm interested in him. I'm not necessarily buying him. And Cook, I'm just worried about his year 1 role. I mean, they brought in Latavius. I don't know that he's going to get the role I want him to. Before the process, I was all in on Dalvin Cook as, RB1 in this class. I thought he was amazing. And then he falls to the 2nd round. So I certainly think, he's a Latavius Murray injury away from being like a league winner. I'm not worried about McKinnon versus him, but at his ADP, basing on, if everyone stays healthy, I don't love it right now. I'd rather go wide receiver in that range.
I was just saying the other day that I think Dalvin Cook is going to be, if he's as good as everyone thinks he is, and I haven't really watched much of him, but if he's as good as everyone thinks he is, I feel like he will be like, the David Johnson rookie year where he's not doing much the first half of the season because they really don't have to. I mean, Latavius Murray is getting paid a lot of money, and he is super cuttable next year. Like, they will not have dead money if they cut him next year, and he's being paid way too much money to sit on the bench this year, I think. I don't know. Scott, what do you think?
Yeah, no, Latavius Murray doesn't scare me. Maybe near the end zone, near the goal line. But other than that, I think this is Dalvin Cook's job to lose. My big issue with him was as a pass blocker. He was a really weak pass blocker. But just from listening to the coaching, the GM post-draft presser, they couldn't stop talking about how much they loved him as a receiver as well as runner and how heavily involved they wanted him to be immediately on the offense. I've heard stuff since then about the switch in scheme and how that's just going to benefit him. Really looks like they're tooling their offense around him. And yeah, Latavius Murray is not someone who threatens me.
So are you buying Cook as
like I mean, he ends up being like the last. I'll be like the 3rd running back I'll draft in like a experts league or experts mock league.
Do you think he gets some of that role that we saw with McKinnon towards the end of the year, like that kind of pass catching role? Is that what you're kind of foreseeing there?
Yeah, as well as the lion's share of the carries. But of course, the concern there is that offensive line's terrible.
Right.
Yes. Although, I mean, they're shifting to zone blocking, so we'll see if they're still terrible. But I don't have much faith. They were really bad.
Yeah.
Let's talk the old guys. So Lynch is catapulted himself after Scott. What did Scott? You ranked him like 12th overall, something like that. Something fucking crazy the other week. And I think you've helped ruin his ADP. So Lynch is what, pick 40 now, something like that. End of the third, beginning of the fourth round. Or is anyone still buying Lynch?
27 overall, and he's slowly creeping up. That's what I said. Is like, I know I'm getting shit for this right now, but I guarantee you by like after a few preseason games of Lynch just trucking someone, he's gonna be a second round pick easy.
You think that motherfucker's playing a preseason game? Hell no. No way. He will be in flip-flops throwing soccer balls by hand this preseason. Come on. I don't know, man. You really, I mean, you don't have concerns?
I mean, definite concerns. He's been out of the league for more than a year. He wasn't very good in his injury-plagued 2015 season. But this is still arguably one of the best running backs of the past decade. He's PFF's most elusive running back ever. Career 2.76 yards after contact, 0.23 missed tackles forced per attempt. No one comes close to that. Dude, in 2013, he forced 97 missed tackles. In 2014, he forced 117, which is almost double what Ajayi did, and he led the league in missed tackles last year with 60. This is going to be the best blocking core Lynch has ever run behind. Latavius certainly didn't have a bell cow role last year, but he had a monstrous role in 2015.
Do you have any concerns that Lynch's essentially best chunk of his career came running behind a running quarterback?
No, I think Russell wasn't really that much of a mobile quarterback, especially early on, right?
What? What?
How many rushing attempts did he have per season? Let's say
he had one big one, and the last 2 years he's been pretty slowing down in terms of rushing attempts.
Yeah, so 95, 115, 105, 72. So I guess so, but like I don't know. That's not really something I think is going to make that much of an impact on Lynch. He's good.
You'd take Lynch around some of those other guys in his ADP over just waiting and grabbing DeAndre Washington, who already has 3 down viability and had some pretty good efficiency numbers on his own last year.
I've already taken the L on Washington. Maybe I need to go back.
I'm not making fun of you at all. I like Washington this year. TJ is the one that kind of got me on him. And before I even started charting him, I told TJ I was looking at Oakland, and he's like, you can just preemptively take your pants off before you watch him. And I liked him. He's like one of my guys this year that I'm targeting late for sure.
So was he that much better than the other backup?
Yeah, I wasn't really a big fan of Richard. I think Richard is more like Sproles-like without kind of everything that makes Sproles great. I think it's just people will remember that really long run he had that 1 week. But like, I think, Richard was one of my lowest guys. He's bottom 10th percentile in rushing and in the passing game. He was pretty good before contact, like we talked about, but that's probably more due to his offensive line. That was really his only redeeming quality in rushing expectation. But DeAndre Washington was considerably better in the passing game and rushing as well. And he was even better against loaded boxes than he was against less than 7 in the box. So I liked Washington fine. I think he's a guy that if you're going to target a player late, as far as like someone that actually has 3 down viability, like it didn't work out so well, but it was part of the reason. I think my process was fine last year. One of the guys I really liked was Charles Sims. If he could have actually performed well, at least, I don't know, once he got that chance, I like to target guys that actually can catch passes as well. And I'm not really sure that I think he still has a passing role with Lynch there. I don't know. Do you think that Lynch is going to catch any passes there at all? I'd rather just target guys around his ADP that I know are going to catch passes.
That's fair. And that's, I don't know. I just don't know what to do with, I mean, Lynch has caught passes, but I think we can all say that Lynch is not like a receiving back. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. Joe, did you look at Lynch's 2015 when you were doing that?
No, I did not.
Year?
Actually, I just looked
because he retired.
The other backs, but I think that'd be pretty interesting. I could actually, in theory, go back and look at previous years. It's something that I've been trying to get around to, but I went up from 20 to 40 players this year, and
yeah, that's a lot.
To doing guys like Adrian Peterson and Marshawn Lynch just didn't seem like they would kind of hold a lot of value, but something I would like to do.
Right, definitely. I just wonder, was Lynch just a significantly worse player in his last season, or was he just hurt? And you know, he kind of mentioned he retired because of injuries. I wonder if he just like was hurt that year, or maybe he was just done. I think that's where the big risk is. Like, was he just like not, you know, was he just losing his skills, or was he just hurt? You know,
the thing is that he was bad like early on.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he was bad like right when the season started. So I don't think he had his hernia injury, you know, day one that he walked on the field. But that definitely affected him later in the season. I don't know. That's super hard to diagnose.
If he's done, though, like there's probably a somewhat decent chance that he's done. Is there a lot of better situations out there? Like this is the kind of situation that happened last year with Spencer Ware. It's like, okay, if Jamal Charles is done, Charkandrick West is trash, Spencer Ware is good, 2 and 2 together. I think it's a similar situation. Like Jalen Richard, trash. Like DeAndre Washington's pretty good. If Lynch is done, like he's in a phenomenal situation and a good offense. Like I would rather take a chance on that in this 16th, 17th round than take the chance on a guy that I have no idea where he's at.
Yeah. I was fine with Lynch when he was like 6th, 7th, 8th round. It has gotten way too expensive for me.
Let me say one more thing on that point though. As far as like kind of the Spencer Ware thing last year, like Gillislee has a lot of like similar qualities as far as like the way his rushing expectation looks last year. But the biggest difference is what I just said. Charkandrick West was trash. The biggest difference with Gillislee is like he has 3 other running backs that are very good and were very efficient. Like that's what my biggest issue with Gillislee. I would love to go all in on Gillislee like I did with Ware last year, just because his efficiency numbers are absolutely absurd. And I do believe in him as a talent, but I also do really like Rex Burkhead as well, which is why I was so interested in what you and Silva were talking about, Scott, just because I really like both of them. And that's like the biggest issue is like, I'm not the biggest James White guy in the world. Like some people like he's fine in the passing game. I don't think he really affects the other 3, but I really like all 3 of the other backs. And I think that's the biggest difference between Gillislee this year and Spencer Ware last year.
Scott, do you still love James White?
Yeah. I think he's locked into that receiving role in New England. You know, they just extended him. He's PFF's 2nd highest graded receiver among running backs on a per snap basis. And, you know, Silva wants to talk about how great of a receiver Burkhead is compared to Gillislee, and that's true, and that's fine. But, you know, James White's there, so he's not really going to get a role at all as a receiver, I think. So it comes down to rushing ability.
Yeah.
And Gillislee just posted like one of the 5 best seasons by a running back with at least 100 carries since the NFL merger in terms of yards per carry average. He crushed last year. I mean, so did McCoy. That offensive line was great. But we just have more of a sample of both players as runners. And I think where Burkhead really shines is on special teams. He was Cincinnati's highest graded special teams player. I mean, granted, he looked great in week 17 up against a good Baltimore run defense.
Maybe, but,
you know,
so many dollars.
Baltimore wasn't playing for anything, and he had the freshest legs humanly possible to run on in the last week of the season. And that was like 40% of his career carries in one game. So, you know, I'm not going to read too much into that.
I think that the Gillislee and Ware parallels are actually pretty interesting for their college profiles as well. As I mentioned with Ware, he was dealing with a lot of highly touted guys, as was Gillislee at Florida. Jeff Demps and Chris Rainey were both 5-star recruits who were track guys, and they kind of were there while Florida was terrible, and Gillislee was just kind of like the ground and pound guy on a horrible offense. So I mean, it was like the same situation. He fell in the draft because he never really had a college role. But yeah, I mean, he's played pretty well so far, I guess.
R.I.P. Bobby Rainey, dude. All right. All right. So the other old guys. So Adrian Peterson, Frank Gore going in similar areas, like 7th, 8th round. I'm buying both of them. I'm probably one of the few people who's sort of, everyone wants to buy Mark Ingram, but not really excited about buying a player that is hated by his entire coaching staff, especially after they signed Adrian Peterson. So Scott, I was just saying that I'm buying AP and Frank Gore at ADP. Are those two other old guys that you're interested in at all? I know you're a big Ingram fan, and I'm an Ingram fan too, but I'm still buying AP at his ADP.
I'm not. I'm not buying either New Orleans running back. But the other old guy I'll take all day, yeah, for sure.
Joe, you interested in either of them?
Not really on the backs in New Orleans as well. I mean, I think there's a case to be made for Peterson and in standard leagues, but I mean, Ingram's been probably the more effective runner and receiver for sure for like a number of years now. I get the whole thing about how the coaching staff doesn't really like him, but I think that Peterson's only path to really matching Ingram's production this year would be through touchdowns. And I just think that that's a kind of a risky stat to really like rely upon.
I think Adrian Peterson is going to score lots of touchdowns. I think that's why I'm interested in him. I know they used sort of multiple guys at the goal line last year. I don't think you sign Adrian Peterson and then take him off the field at the goal line. I don't foresee that happening ever. I mean, Russ, do you think that future Hall of Famer Adrian Peterson's coming off the field at the goal line?
I do not, but I have a point to make about Alvin Kamara.
Here we go.
I don't want him at all. I don't. Why is his? I don't know what is his
Scott
MFL10?
Wants him.
What is his MFL10 ADP? I guess we can talk about him for a second. And Marlon Mack. I think those two guys are sort of garnering some hype. And I don't know if they're year one guys.
Kamara's going 130 ADP. He's like an RB4.
So I guess my question is, what's the ceiling for role in year one? Are they just gonna I guess it's the question of, do you think they totally cut Ingram out and start using Kamara as like a third down back, or is he going to be like a receiver? Because that's the people that like him, that's kind of what their angle is. I just don't know that I see it in year one.
Yeah. So like I said, I'm kind of not really targeting any of the New Orleans running backs just because it's so crowded already, and I honestly don't know what's going to happen. But year one, you're saying, right? So
yeah.
During the Saints Day 2 press conference, GM Mickey Loomis said, we're excited to get a player we coveted, talking about Alvin Kamara, that I would expect to fill the role that Reggie Bush and Darren Sproles had for us in the past, right? Pretty obvious, kind of what we'd expect from the offense and given Kamara's natural talents. But that role was a hyper valuable one for both Bush and Sproles in PPR leagues, especially early on in their careers. Reggie Bush averaged 16.7, 17.4, and 17.2 fantasy points per game during his first 3 seasons in New Orleans. Darren Sproles averaged 17.0 and 16.5 fantasy points per game during his first 2 seasons in New Orleans. So we saw both those guys just immediately get right into a massive workload. And we saw Brandon Cooks leave for New England. So possibly Kamara could start playing a bigger role in the passing game almost immediately. But
turd last
his ADP is not terrible.
Who was that turd last year that was supposed to fill that role that everybody was excited about taking late?
The guy from Cal, the super athletic guy, Daniel Lasco. Yeah.
Yeah, but then there was the other guy too. Like later in the season, everyone was like, "Oh, pick up so and so. He's about to inherit like the passing role," and then he had like 6 catches or something.
That maybe, I don't know.
Oh, I can't even remember who that was. That's how bad he was. And then we had CJ Spiller before that. I don't know. I mean, it's like it's nice to say the Reggie Bush role, but like these guys aren't Reggie Bush. So I think it's hard to translate. Oh, Travaris Cadet got it from chat. That motherfucker. Remember? Pick him up. He's going to get 7 targets a game or whatever. And then he didn't. I feel like that's going to be the same thing. I don't know. Kamara, like Dino, whatever, that's fine. I don't think he has any redraft value. So I'm interested with his ADP too.
But and you guys, the Marlon Mack thing, I guess. I don't know. No. I don't think so. I'd rather just go with Gore and ride that, but I don't know.
I agree with you. Like Mac would be fine if he was going later than he's going. People are like targeting him. He's like moving up in ADP.
He was an okay prospect. I kind of had him as a 3rd rounder. He ended up going 4th. I compared him to Charles Sims. Actually, I kind of see him as a 3rd down type back. But I don't know if he gets Gore and Turbin off the field. Turbin's still there, right?
Yep.
Yeah. That takes on that.
The last year, Gore's job was going to be taken by somebody. This year, Gore's job is going to be taken by somebody. And it's like, if Gore gets injured, his job is going to be lost. But that's the only way that's possibly going to happen. Like, I don't care. Even if you came on here, Russ, and said Marlon Mack was like some god late round, like, someone people had missed, I still wouldn't think that he's going to just like come in day one and take Frank Gore's job. Scott, You're buying Gore, right? You're always buying Gore. Mm-hmm. Joe, do you have thoughts on Gore?
I don't know if I have a strong take on Gore, but I think at his ADP, he's fine. I mean, I don't know if I really want to be the guy that's just going to bet on him dropping off every year, because that guy has been not winning a lot of money these past couple of years. So I think he's perennially kind of undervalued for the type of volume he's going to see in such a good offense.
And I think it's interesting too that like he's going later this year than he went last year at this time. Am I right, Scott? I think he moved up into like the 6th round at this point last year.
I don't remember.
Right. He moved up though towards the end of the year. So I think we're not to say we're getting a big discount on Gore, but I think we're getting a slight discount on Gore versus last year, because I think every year people are a little more worried that he's going to drop off. So I think that's a discount to take. I mean, I'm taking Gore over like Samaje Perine, who's going then. I mean, let's talk about another rookie. Are we buying him to suddenly come in and rush for 1,000 yards?
I believe it's Samaje Perine.
Whatever his fucking name is, dude. It's spelled wrong.
I'm just not necessarily in on Washington. So I'm having trouble like gauging what their workload's going to look like and if they're going to be down a lot. I mean, I'd be interested in what your guys' perspectives are on that.
Go ahead, Scott.
So Rob Kelly was sneaky, super efficient last season in terms of yards after contact per attempt, missed tackles forced per attempt. Ranked a lot higher than you'd otherwise expect. Chris Thompson's there, so neither back's going to get targets, which is what you want in PPR leagues. I'm not going to draft either of them, and then in DFS, I'm going to maybe play them when they're at home, and I think they're going to win by a good amount.
Yeah, I think that's the way to play that. Just play him in DFS in good matchups, but like in season long, I just worry about that role. I know people like Perine as a prospect, and I like him too, but to assume he's going to take that job from Rob Kelly, I think that's a jump. Joe, did you do Rob Kelly?
Yeah, I did Kelly, I did Thompson. They were guys that didn't perform well. I'm not really on either of them. Don't know much about the rookie. I would assume that he's going to be fine, but I'm not really on the Washington run game. At that ADP, I'm just taking a New England back, to be honest.
Yeah. No, I'm not all that excited about Redskins pieces in general. And I know Russ is on this train with me too. I worry about the loss of Deshaun Jackson, the loss of Pierre Garçon. I feel like Kirk Cousins has sort of performed at sort of the top of his range of outcomes for the last few years. And, I worry about Washington in general having some regression. Everyone thinks that Kirk Cousins is destined to continue to be QB1 forever. But worry about the team in general, and if there's going to be some struggles, with some transitions, with some new pieces, I'm not really interested in the guys that are, going to get 16 carries on the ground and not catch any passes. So no thanks. All right, so we're getting towards our hour. Let's try and keep it to an hour. Even though Scott's on, we're not going to go for 2 hours. Let's talk late round pieces that you guys are really interested in. I know, Joe, obviously one of your favorites is DeAndre Washington, but give me another one. Somebody going, I don't know, after round 8 or 9, something like that you can think of that you like.
Yeah, see, there's one guy that really stands out, and I'm still not completely sure if it's just because of my biases from last year, but I still really like Thomas Rawls. I know there's a lot of people that really like Lacey and what he's done, but as far as rushing expectation, Rawls did a lot better than Lacey in pretty much every category, and he faced 8 or more in the box much more frequently. I've already seen his upside, so there's kind of a situation where there's a difference between targeting a guy you think has upside and targeting a guy who you've actually seen his upside. And I do like ProSice as well, but I'm not sure that their values really impact each other a whole lot. But if you're going to tell me Thomas Rawls versus Eddie Lacy and kind of taking ADP into consideration, I'm probably taking Rawls every time, somewhere around the 13th, 14th round.
So you're not in on Lacy becoming the bell cow in Seattle.
I just don't think he's going to catch enough passes, and that might sound counterintuitive because neither is Rawls, but I think I like what Rawls can do for me. I think that if there is if Lacey can't come back and if he ends up kind of running into the injury troubles that he's had lately, I don't hate Lacey. I really don't hate him. I just don't think he's worth a 7th round pick. I would much rather take Rawls in the 13th, 14th and get what I think is similar upside, but probably a better floor, especially if there's just kind of one of those guys plus ProSace. And from what Rawls did last year, I mean, he was the 2 years ago in 2015, he was one of my top guys. And I feel like he kind of got into some injury trouble last year, which he might again. His durability is definitely an issue. But in regards to the stats that matter from kind of what I've been charting, Rawls is just one of those guys that always pops up. And I do like the Seattle run game quite a bit. And if I'm going to target one of them, it's going to be the one I can get the latest, and that's Rawls.
Fair enough. Are you guys, Russ, are you buying Lacey? I'm kind of buying Lacey. Not stoked about it, but I'm sort of in it. I'm buying Rawls too. Not on the same teams. Don't do that, people.
I kind of was totally out on the rest of Lacey's career. And then you kind of look at what he did in Green Bay those first few years. And even though he was fat the whole time, he was actually pretty good. He wasn't great, but he put up some pretty decent volume. So, he's okay. I'm not loving him. I'm not avoiding, he's just kind of that wishy-washy guy that if it's the right spot in the right team, I'll take him, but I'm not seeking him out.
For me, it's I feel pretty confident that it's one or the other.
Yeah.
So I'm buying both of them.
Take the chance.
But I'm not people want to take them both on the same team. That's so dumb. If they both do things, then your team is so fucked. The goal is that one or the other is going to do things. So I'm buying both of them on opposite teams. I'm not buying CJ ProSice. I don't think that they brought in Lacey and paid him all this money to make CJ ProSice their, 3-down back that people think he's going to be, because he caught one 80-yard touchdown pass, whatever it was, and we all rejoiced because he saved our cash lineups. So I'm buying them both, but I really don't know what's going to happen, because I do think that Rawls is probably better than Lacy, but I don't know if the team thinks that. That's my concern.
In terms of mine, can I say DeAndre Washington? Because now I'm sold on him.
No, dude.
I mean, in terms of late round guys, we hit on Frank Gore. I feel like he's a guy that I just want to buy. But I'm looking at these late round guys. I'm not really loving any of the rookies. I mean, depending on how you feel about Lamar Miller, Deontay Foreman saw a ton of touches in 2016, and is a guy that profiles as someone who could handle a lot of touches. But that's kind of more of a dart if you don't have a lot of running backs. I don't love him as a guy that you can really count on. Just sort of a high upside play you might be able to throw out there.
So you take is that your guy, Russ?
That's it. That's all I got, man. I'm not prepared for this.
Can we drag Scott away from Tinder right now? Looking down.
He probably is. Scott, dude, give me a late round running back.
Super late, Joe Williams and all the hype surrounding him from his draft selection. You know how Johnny and I both feel about Kyle Shanahan. Yeah, man, James Conner needs to be drafted in every draft, and he's not being drafted in every draft or the last few rounds. That one's pretty simple. I mean,
D'Angelo's on speed dial, bro.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Yeah, maybe they signed D'Angelo Williams, but right now that's still a no-brainer draft pick at his current ADP, which is like RB64 right now. But over the past 2 seasons and games started and finished, D'Angelo Williams averaged 22.9 fantasy points per game. For perspective, Ezekiel Elliott averaged 21.8 fantasy points per game in PPR leagues last season.
What about Fitzgerald Croissant in his starts?
I don't know that he ever started and finished a game. Maybe in the postseason.
He didn't do shit. I don't know.
James Conner's better than Fitzgerald Toussaint.
He probably is. I don't think that they expected D'Angelo to be as good as he was. I don't think anyone expected that to happen. So I have trouble translating a repeat from James Conner. That's my concern.
Are you referring to people didn't think he'd be as good of a wrestler as he is? Or are you talking about football?
Well,
he's 34 years old. It's the most valuable backup role in all of fantasy. He's going to see a massive workload. If something were to happen to Bell, which given history seems somewhat likely, injury history, suspension risk, possible holdout, who knows? But yeah.
But no, I will not take a stance on James Conner, but I'll say that with Joe Williams is another one. I'm just buying Hyde on some teams, and I'm buying Williams on the other teams. And
yeah, I like Hyde.
I think you're going to get one or the other. I mean, I think Hyde probably holds the job if he doesn't get hurt, but the dude is hurt all the time. And if he's hurt, it's probably Joe Williams because that's the dude that Shanahan picked. So
where is LeGarrette Blount going in drafts?
That's who I was going to mention.
How many shares? I think he's probably a value.
He's going like 90th. He's literally
they really don't cut Ryan Matthews, and then that's just the most annoying offense in football.
That's possible. But that's why I'm also occasionally buying Ryan Matthews as my 20th pick. I mean, I don't know what to do with that. But no, I guess my late picks I would say are alternating Kenneth Dixon and Terrence West. I think it's one or the other.
Yes.
It's one or the other. I think it's West's job to lose, but I think it's very possible that he loses it. But there's a chance, because he's Ozzy's Towson guy, that's his boy from Baltimore, that he holds it. I mean, that might happen. But I also I'm not buying this Danny Woodhead thing going as an RB2. I'd rather buy the guys who I think are going to score the touchdowns, one or the other. So I'll alternate taking those two, and I'll own 0 Danny Woodhead this season.
John, I got one question for you before we kind of get out of here. As far as like strategy goes, it's something you said not too long ago. So what do you think about drafting one of the top 3. You get Zeke, Bell, or DJ, and then attacking like an entire backfield. You said that your team's entirely like totally fucked if you take both Seattle backs and they both do something. But what if you end up with the guy that no one knows? You know what I mean? No, we don't know if it's going to be Lacy or Rawls. We don't know. But what if you have both and one of them takes off? So my kind of strategy thing that I've been throwing around in my head these past couple of weeks is taking one of the top 3 and then attacking one of these like outlier backfields that have been really efficient, that are going to score a lot of points, like the New Englands or the Seattles, or even like attacking Oakland to some degree, and just pairing one of those elite guys, almost like a mixture between hyper fragile drafting and late kind of a late running back. Like, what do you think about pairing an entire backfield with one of the elite options and then just calling it quits at running back, hoping that you'd at least get 2 guys? Because you're going for first place. I mean, I realize I'm probably less risk averse than most people. Like, I probably stack in MFL10s more than the majority of people, but it's just been something as far as running back strategy that I've been considering, at least for those offenses that are kind of outliers as far as what their efficiency has been and what their situation's like this year.
I would much rather just alternate them.
Like, as far as your entire portfolio, you'd rather alternate them.
Yeah, and that comes with a volume thing. I mean, if you're doing 10 drafts only and you want to have a team with Lacy and Rawls on it, that's fine. But if you're going to do 40, 50 drafts, I wouldn't want to have any team with both of them, because I think you want to swing for the fence. You know, it's just like a DFS lineup. You're not going to put, you know, if you're not sure if it's going to be a James White game or a LeGarrette Blount game, you're not going to put both of them on the same team.
See, that's where I disagree with you. I think over an entire season, I think that's a risk you can take, because if you do hit on one of those, you have collectively the New England running back. You know what I mean?
Sure, but you've wasted 2 running back spots. The New England backs, though, are a little different.
That's what I'm saying, but like, it almost it almost raises your floor, in my opinion, as stacking does in a lot of sports, because you don't have to make the choice. When I make choices, I make a lot of bad decisions. If you limit those choices and pair it with an elite option, that if that option doesn't get hurt and you have the New England back, if there is the New England back, I think that it's something that's worth considering. At least, yeah, I do think that volume, as far as how many drafts you're taking, does play a role, though. I do agree with you there.
When they have different roles, that's a thing. So, you know, to have a team with James White and LeGarrette Blount on it last year is fine. Mm-hmm. But with 2 guys who we know are competing for the same role, those are the 2 guys I don't want to have. So the Thomas Rawls and the Eddie Lacy. But if you want to take Lacy and Procise, that's different to me.
Do you think it's more often that, so those guys with similar roles, do you think it's more often that one takes off, or that they just split it and they're both worthless? That's what I'm trying to figure out.
And that's the thing, is that there's absolutely a possibility that Lacy and Rawls split all the carries and they both,
and then your team's dead.
Right. So I'm not going to have like 50% Lacy, 50% Rawls. But I think there's a definite possibility that one of them is the 60% back and the other is the 40. And that's why I want the 60, but I don't want both on the same team, if that makes any sense.
That's fair. I'm just something I've been kind of thinking about, especially those ones where you can actually pair a good majority of the backfield with like your really late picks and then focus on your early picks as far as like wide receivers and such.
Yeah, and I think it would be different if you're doing like Lynch and Washington, where Washington's going like round 20, whereas Rawls is going like round 12 or so, something like that.
Would you guys entertain Murray Henry combo or Freeman Coleman at all?
Okay. See, I think that's where those are 2 guys that you got to pay a pretty large draft capital for. I think the only way that this even like is somewhat of a consideration is if you take one elite guy and then you pair the majority of the backfield with your later picks.
And with Freeman and Coleman, it's like they're going to be stuck in a committee all season, so there's limited upside from having both of them.
Yeah, and it's definitely a draft capital thing. You don't want to waste valuable draft capital on 2 guys from the same team, on the same roster, that is. So, any other last-minute running back thoughts we want to throw out here? Scott, Russ?
I think Jordan Howard sees a decline in target volume this season. That's why I have Jay Ajayi over him. I still like Howard a lot as a talent, but I think he a little overperformed given game script and that offense in general, which I don't think is going to be very much to improve this season.
I think they'll stink.
He led, yeah, exactly. He led all running backs in drop rate last season, percentage of targets dropped. Yeah, the next closest was almost half that, 13.8%. And he signed Benny Cunningham, so a little down on him in PPR leagues.
So DeMarco or Howard?
Probably still Howard.
Ooh, I think I take DeMarco there.
It's close for me. I'm starting. I was on Howard like before. Early in the season, I was way more on Howard, but I'm starting to come around that I think DeMarco might move up for me. Russ, any last minute thoughts?
I'm just happy to have draftable running backs again. Happy to have them back. We're able to draft them early again, and I feel comfortable with it.
Making running back great again.
Making running back great again, and I'm ready for it. I'm here for it.
So you're not in on zero RB this year?
No zero RB for this guy. RB heavy, baby. We don't need any of those late round Kenyon Drake shares. We don't need any of that.
I forgot about that shit, dude. Every year. But you know what? There will always be the Devonta Freeman, and that will constantly be the argument. But hey, what do I know? All right. Well, this is MFL10 RB episode. We are sponsored by My Fantasy League. Make sure you guys check out the MFL10s. If you're listening to this and you've never done an MFL10, well, I don't know why you listened the whole way because that's what we're talking about, but sign up for them. MFL10s.com. That's MFL10s.com. Sign up, play some. Even if you're just going to do a couple, it will get you ready for your redraft leagues. You won't find Russ in them because he's banned in the state that he's in. But you will find me and Scott and Joe in one of the two listener leagues that we are going to run. Review the podcast. We are going to hand out free, I guess you want to call them coupons or credits for the listeners for those leagues. Joe will be in it. Scott will be in it. I will be in it. Hodge will be in some of them, one or both of them as well. We're going to figure it out how to get all the guests in them. But sign up, check them out. Find Joe on Twitter at Joe Holka. That is HOLKA. Find Russ on Twitter at Russell Clay, Russell with 2 L's and Clay with a C. And find Scott on Twitter at Scott Barrett DFB. If you didn't already follow Scott and you're listening to this pod, that would be weird. So find me on Twitter at John Proctor DFS and find the podcast on Twitter at our brand new name. We lost the underscore at Power Hour DFS. And make sure you sign up for the preseason package. We will be back for the preseason. That will not be free because that advice is too good to be free. Guys, any closing? Scott, you got any dates tonight?
Absolutely not.
Nope, nothing.
Yeah, salty date with Russ after.
Yo, I got some dill pickle chips if you want to come over, bro.
I'm so DT PC.
That got weird really quick. All right. Well, I'm John. That was Scott. This was Russell. This was Joe. And we're out. Peace.